That is just so bizarre to me. We know that they deal in bioweapons. They've been working on it for quite some time. I'm just going to read something out of the Journal of Degenerative Diseases. This is Dr. Nicholson talking about it, where he says, in the case of prisoners as experimental subjects, Texas has a long history of using prisoners for clinical trials. According to the minutes of the Texas Department of Corrections Board, selected prisons in East Texas were used for experiments that were conducted using various mycoplasma species to determine pathogenicity and countermeasures against infection. This likely resulted in the spread of mycoplasmal illnesses from prisoners to guards and other prison employees, and then their immediate family members in the community. So is that what rang true? That how were you introduced to these?
That's what rang true, and I read this story, and I was like, that's it, because nothing else made any sense. I was thinking it was a bacteriophage, which is like...
Did you have a family member in the prison system?
We had a family member, right, that was down here in the Texas prison systems about that time. And I was able to look at the medical records and figure out exactly when we were infected. You can either get, it was 2002 when it happened, we were directly invaded. You can either be directly invaded with this organism, in which case you get really sick, like with a flu that you just can't get better from. It's like 7 to 9 days, 9 to 12 days. I mean, I remember we were deathly sick. Or you can contract it slowly over time with 24 casual exposures. So say you work with someone, or you live with someone, you slowly contract it. When those people contract it, the symptoms don't seem to be as virulent as when someone is directly invaded. And so at that point, 2002, when we trace everything back, you can start to slowly see the evolution of the symptoms. And I'm just going to say ADHD was huge, night terrors, separation anxiety, sinus infections, headaches, nightmares. And then it progressed to joint pain. But we never put it together because they're so scattered that you just, one thing pops up, you go get that looked at, it's taken care of, but it's the same organism.
And this is an explosion of all of these acronym type diseases people are dealing with that are out there. I mean, this is new, and people are not really stopping to say, well, why does everyone have ADD and OCD and these types of things now?
Exactly. And then you're thinking all these other problems like finances, or it's my marriage, or it's my children, or it's just whatever. You're blaming everything else, not realizing what the actual root is.
Wow. And then so you really get into the nitty gritty. I mean, I've got the patent right here for pathogenic mycoplasma, filed June 6, 1991, after, of course, they do a series of clinical trials to see, countermeasures, things like that. You can always find these patents. Now, you really get into this in your book, America is Infected. So talk to me a little bit more about the book. How can people learn more about what is next?
I'm really excited about this, because I think it is time that this information gets out. I mean, Dr. Nicholson tried to tell him back in 1998. He went in front of the Senate committees. You cannot find it by blood. You have to find it by polymerase chain reaction testing. At that point in time, for whatever reason, they did not listen. But just like you said, there is an explosion. Everyone knows there is something. They just don't know what it is. I'm not really an author, but when I found this out, I said, I'm going to figure out how to write a book, because I've got to tell people this is just such a travesty. But on my Facebook page, on the Pandas Facebook page, I'm like, I'm going to write a book. And then all of a sudden, you need an editor. So an editor just falls into my life. And this is how this works also with my agent, Dr. Stuckey. He has been working with me now to get this information out. We're working on the website. You can actually buy the book by going to americaisinfected.com. I highly recommend reading it from beginning to end. Like I've heard from moms, chapters 1 through 11 give me PTSD. But it's very chaotic, but it's reminiscent of so many lives today. And then you'll see how I start to figure things out. I documented all the doctor's visits, what they said to me, my questions to them, how I recorded things. I also really get into depth about the juvenile court systems and how corrupt they are, and how if a doctor doesn't even recognize this, how can a social worker or a DCS make the decisions to tear families apart when doctors don't even know about this infection? It's completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
Right. And it also makes a lot of sense of why they would want a controversial topic like this to stay under the radar and just tell you that you're crazy, and we need to take your kid away. And by the way, we're going to put him on all sorts of other medications for psych meds because he's crazy too. Meanwhile, this is actually happening. They're actually dealing with bioweapons in the prison system and elsewhere, a lot of times in the foster care system and with these kids who don't have a parental unit making sure that they're not being used in clinical trials and things. But this type of stuff is really going on. And it does take someone like you who really cares and who isn't going to allow themselves to be gaslighted and told that, you know, you're crazy, this doesn't exist, in order to bring these things to light. And of course, to have doctors and things like that who aren't afraid to speak out, because who knows what else is out there. I mean, this is one patent that we're dealing with in one small Texas prison. It's just, I mean, it's just what's out there is crazy to me. So people can go to americaisinfected.com. Is there any other websites, or buy the book for sure?
Just buy the book there, or read the book. Buy 5 copies for your friends and family. Anyone that has any symptoms, just give them the information. Just tell them. I will say the treatment is in the patent. The inventor would know the right treatment. So the treatment is in the patent. Also, there's protocol on Dr. Nicholson's website that we actually followed for our whole family. By the way, did I mention we actually found it in our dog? The dog got treatment too. Everyone's doing much better.
Yeah.
So there is
this
hope.
is airborne thing. So this is something that a lot of people might be dealing with that they don't even know. And meanwhile, they're going to pump you full of all the drugs that you don't really need that aren't going to help you. Well, Ella, thank you so much for what you've written here and what you've done for this country, really. So go out and buy the book, America is Infected, at americaisinfected.com. Joining me in studio now is our investigative journalist, Kit Daniels. Kit, now you've got a story coming out of the EU. This is something we've talked about for years. And once again, they're proposing this, and they might actually get their chance this time around because of all the terrorism that they've been importing. Of course, order out of chaos. So this is once again EU proposing the government ID to access the internet.
Yeah, exactly. This is just the government using the guise of anything that they want to push into, you know, total tyranny. It's like you said, though. Of course, they're going to use. They let in all the Muslim migrants into Europe. You know, then all of a sudden they have bombings and what have you, but they still won't close any of the borders. And now, yeah, it's like
it's the new normal.
Yeah,
terrorism.
Yeah, it's the new normal, terrorism, just like you said. And the new normal is to take away the rights of the citizens, but not the terrorists, because the terrorists are these useful patsies that they can use to bring in complete police state.
Yeah, and so this is obviously something that's going to be eradicating both online privacy as well as free speech. People are already likening it to the mark of the beast. And we have seen this being proposed for years. There was actually the Bilderberg back in 2012, were pushing for mandatory internet ID for Europe. And I know that you all did some reporting on this in 2014 about how the White House was wanting to push Chinese-style ID system for internet users. So what would this look like?
Well, going back like 15 years ago, even 20 years ago, back in the infancy of the internet, so to speak, you know, you didn't have that many people using it. You could go on there anonymously and go on a Usenet group or whatnot and post your thoughts, opinions on everything without fear of public backlash, because no one knew who you were. It was literally a digital Guy Fawkes mask. And now when Facebook came around, I think 2004, they started conditioning people into using their real names, and they're using their real photos and whatnot. And now what you have is Facebook and Twitter. It's got maybe a third of the internet now, as far as the traffic. So it's like Matt Drudge said back in October, it's a complete internet ghetto.
Right.
Now, I even go further than that. It's turned into a virtual superstate.
Right.
Just kind of like the Holy Roman Empire, except it's all digital. So instead, and of course, they don't want people being anonymous in their little virtual superstate, because when you are not anonymous, you fear backlash of spreading your opinion. So it's a complete chilling effect on free speech.
Right, and we've already started to see that now that people understand that they're being tracked on Facebook and these others. Facebook app on your phone can be listening to you at all times. It's just to sell you targeted advertising, but of course, that's what they say right now. Who knows where it could go? We also have a story coming out now that the police and FBI are wanting Android to turn over all of their location tracking. So if you have that turned on your phone, which a lot of people don't understand, when you get your phone, it's all set up to heavily track you and surveil you. You have to turn all of these things off. And now the police are filing warrants saying, give us the location data so that we can start putting people where they were when certain things happened, and they really are building the Minority Report as we speak all around us.
Yeah, it's like I said in so many videos, is that the government can only expand at the expense of individual liberties. And the government, especially government officials, they always want more and more power. But they're never going to hit a line that's going to stop them from gaining more power. So what you're going to see is more draconianism, more authoritarianism. So yeah, it's like exactly, they're just going to treat people like cattle. You know, they want to track people. They really don't even have a reason to track people. I mean, when you think about it.
They want to control, they're obsessed with controlling every single aspect of our life, to the point now that they're putting out these propaganda campaigns on mainstream media about how great it is to microchip your kids, because then they won't get kidnapped and they won't get stolen, and that's how they're going to sell it.
And that's the other thing, is the fact that they, when they suppress other people's speech by not allowing them to go online and talk, you know, freely, then they can put out whatever propaganda they want.
Right. Because they have no counter argument, or their little sock puppets will pop up in all the chat rooms. I mean, they've got all the bases covered at this point. And let's just point out this article that came out earlier this week about the French officials who were able to do a secret tax raid on the Google offices there, so that they could say, hey, you know, you owe us billions in taxes for setting up shop here. Well, the only way that they were able to do that was by going completely offline. They had one PC that they had in their station that was only accessing like the word processor. So they went completely offline for over a year. They weren't even allowed to utter the words Google, just in case their phone was listening to them. They had to give it a secret code name. So this is, you know, this is really interesting, that they're going to have all of us being tracked and surveilled at every movement. Yet they know that they're going to have to go underground to be kind of incognito and to get around the big eye of Sauron that's Google. So even now, you know, your state officials are having to kind of figure out how to get around this.
Yeah, it's complete hypocrisy, but when you think about it, total control comes from hypocrisy, because the government wants the dominant position. So of course they're going to do something that they don't want you to do.
Well, let's move on and talk a little bit about why this is so bizarre that we would want to give the government the ability to microchip us or ask for their permission in order to access the internet. It's super scary when you think about Elon Musk saying, become cyborgs or risk human beings being turned into robots' pets. So he's saying the only way that we're going to be able to be smarter than the AI, the super AI that's on its way, is if we ourselves get these brain chip implants and are able to instantly access the internet and all of that. But the fact is, the internet is going to be whatever that brain chip allows us to access. Who's in control of the internet? Who's in control of wherever we're allowed to access?
Yeah, exactly. And like I was telling you before the show, I think he spent, what, $1 billion or something like that to find ways to fight the coming AI war. But it's like AI is still in its infancy. I mean,
yeah.
So why don't we just pull the plug now?
Exactly, and they cannot help themselves. What do you think about, he also said that Elon Musk said we're living in a computer simulation, that if we're not, there's only a 1 in billions chance that we're not living in a computer simulation. And now I've been saying this for a long time. It seems very weird. We've seen, of course, this theory in the Matrix as well.
Yeah, this is something that I've been very interested in the past year. The fact that what I kind of disagree with when it comes to atheism is they think that we live in the base reality. But I kind of think that the universe lives in a superstructure, if you will. And I think it was back in April when these University of Vienna, I think, physicists, they freaked out because they realized all their mathematical models work better if the universe was a hologram. Like if it's a 2D, but you and me, we see it as a 3D object. So, you know, it kind of gets to me, I crack a little bit because there's all this online debate over still if the Earth is flat.
Flat, right.
But maybe the universe is flat.
Yeah. Oh my, maybe we are a computer simulation, like just like the Sims characters, which now update to the Sims, they have made it so that you can choose whatever kind of gender identity you like for the Sims. I mean, right, they're basically saying that our reality is just a grander version of the Sims.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I took a astronomy class in college, and one of the things I remember from the class was the fact that all the elements that you see in our solar system is anywhere in the universe.
Right.
So a galaxy hundreds of thousands of light years from here is still going to have carbon and argon and what have you. And it kind of reminds me of that video game Minecraft. You know, it was basically the game itself is like a sandbox game that's randomly generated world with blocks. You know, you've got sand blocks and iron blocks and air blocks and water blocks. And they say that one game world is like 8 times the size of planet Earth. And this is just a video game. And same thing with Elon Musk. What he said was the fact that 40 years ago, we only had Pong. And now we have games like Minecraft. So theoretically, we could get to a point where computer systems are